All right. Well, welcome everybody to MVP Office Hours. I am one of the hosts, Jared Kingston, Salesforce MVP, and joined by co-host Jackie Travieso. Jackie, you want to say hi?
Hey folks, glad you could join us today.
And unfortunately, we're missing Dale today, so he is off doing the day job. So we appreciate his help behind the scenes. As we do with all MVP Office Hours, we just like to kick off with a highlight of events. And as you can see, there's hardly anything going on within the Salesforce ecosystem from an events perspective. There's no big events coming up.
Chuckle.
Plenty. Yes, thank you for that. As you can see, we've got a couple of Dreamins. I didn't even know there was a North Africa Dreamin. That sounds awesome. I got to figure out how to get over there in just a few short days. Down Under Dreamin, so you can. Man, I got to go to Down Under Dreamin, and then Dreamforce is like just around the corner, which is crazy to think about. And then several Dreamins in the new year to start planning for. So definitely check those out, as well as certainly your local user groups or Trailblazer groups, as I believe we're calling them these days. Plenty to do. Check them out if you haven't. And all right, so just a quick recap. I think most of you have been on the call, but again, this is an open webinar call. Everybody participates. We have MVPs on the call, but at the end of the day, we're all trying to help each other out. So if you have an experience that can help, definitely pitch in. We just ask everybody mutes, right? It's can be hard to hear questions with a barking dog or a crazy kid, and which in both cases are my house. So just mute yourself and announce yourself when you're asking questions or answering, just so we can recognize the voice with the name. And we have the chat there to post resources. So if you have a helpful resource, definitely post it in there. We'll compile those as we go and share them out at the end. And if it gets down to it, we have done where we'll give you sharing, and you can share your screen, and we can see what we're looking at and try to help you resolve it. MVPs on the call. I lost my Zoom window. If you could just raise your hand, I can see most of you, but
you got Jackie, you got Christy.
Yeah. All right, yeah, we got Jackie, as you heard from. We got Christy, we got Stuart and Brendan. So yeah, we got plenty of support here. And lastly, right, MVP Officers is a global initiative, and we have this one. We have one in EMEA, and we have one that's Portuguese focused that Carlos leads. And definitely welcome to participate in any of those if you're up for helping out there. As you can see, we hold ours the first and third Friday, EMEA's last Thursday, and so is Portuguese. You can find all the information you need about all of these groups on mvpofficehours.info. It has the link to sign up. The link never changes, so it's super easy for you to bookmark that.
And you do not have to speak Portuguese to be involved in the Portuguese group. Carlos does a fantastic job of translating both directions. So if you're free and you've got some time, they would love some additional support out there.
That's right. Good call out. Awesome. Well, I think that's the last slide there. Anything to add, Jackie, before we get rolling?
Nope, that's it.
All right, awesome. I'm going to get out of presentation mode because I'm not giving a sales presentation. So let's get rolling. Did you want to ask your question, Jen?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I'm Jennifer. I'm calling in from Charlotte, North Carolina. I have an upcoming task to get rid of record types. I'd love to get any input or comments y'all have. Our use case is we set up Salesforce to manage customers in our nonprofit system. So we have a contact record type if you're a customer. We have a different contact record type if you're a staff person at a partner agency. And we have a different record type if you're a volunteer. Right now, we're seeing some clients becoming volunteers, so they're both. Very soon, we're moving all of our donor data into Salesforce. So now we're going to have people who could be customers, volunteers, donors, and partner agency representatives. So we're thinking we just got to get rid of our record types. Are we correct? And any comments or caveats or experience?
Anybody want to jump in there?
Do you have any automation or any dependencies on those record types that you know of right now?
I am sure we have tons.
Well,
Okay.
I guess my question would be, the advantage of record types is that it gives you different page layouts and different pick list values. So I understand that you're going to have people who are maybe combinations of those things, but do you still need that granular control of, let's say, pick list values? Or
We will,
different-
yep, because the donor fields are going to be completely different. Yeah, we're going to have to know different things about them.
And since, interesting. Because I mean, there's only so many possible combinations potentially, right? So I could see using record types still, but I could also see, using some kind of, so you won't be able to to completely revert and turn record types off, I don't believe, but you could certainly migrate them all to one that's just called, contact, and only give people access to that one, and it's their default, so they would never see it from an experience perspective. But I'm just thinking of, you'd have to potentially replace that with a pick list that then becomes the master for other pick lists on your page, so that you can, if you want to control values, or that would also help control visibility of components if you wanted to manage, if they are certain things, maybe it's even a checkbox that controls it, then there's different components that you see.
Okay.
Because, right, that's the main advantage with record types is that you can have different layouts, which I think you can kind of achieve now with the Lightning component visibility in similar ways, and then controlling the values that you see in pick lists. Those are the two key things, unless I'm not thinking of something else.
And how would you, I immediately thought of related lists, like only reveal this related list if it's a volunteer, only reveal this related list if it's a customer.
I think you could handle that with component visibility too.
Yep. Yep.
Mhm.
So this is Stuart. My mind is kind of going on the HEDA model a little bit. So from what I understand about how universities use CRMs and how the HEDA model is used at, HEDA means higher education model.
Data architecture.
Yeah, the data architecture for how a Salesforce model would be used at a university system. And if you think about a customer life cycle in a university setting, you might go from a high school senior, and you're a prospect candidate to go to a university, and then you would become a university attendee, a student there, and then if you graduate, you would become an alumni, and as an alumni, you may also become a volunteer, and you may also be a donor to their programs. And then you also might get a job at that university. So you might become an employee. And there are a number of things that you are still the same you. You're still the same person, but you fill into different roles. And this is true of many nonprofit organizations where you're a donor, you're a volunteer, you're a member, you might be an employee, you might hold several different roles that could be different record types of a contact. But I believe in the HEDA model, and someone will correct me if I'm totally wrong, but they would use a related list for that. So the related list of like a role, and then the role would have a type, and the type. So you could be multiple types at any one time. You could be a volunteer and an alumni and an employee all at the same time and still be you.
Okay.
But having those different types, and the reason why they put it in a related list is that having a related list allows you to add more information about that. So if you're a volunteer, then you can add information in that list about what you're volunteering for and how many hours and all this information about that record. Or if you're a student, then you would have more information about your role as a student in that part of the record. But by having those different related list records, that could expose information on your contact record as well. And
you have a related list for role, and it could contain multiple role records.
Yep, it can. Yeah. So the related list.
How do you vary the columns that are showing on the related list based on the role you're holding?
Well, the list. I don't know if you wouldn't be able to vary the columns that you're showing on that list.
Okay.
It would just vary the values of the type, and then you would have to have a standard whatever you're showing for that list.
Oh, and then would it reveal different fields back on your contact page? Is that what you're saying?
You could. Yeah, you could.
Okay.
In Lightning, you can. So
okay, that's interesting.
You can expose information back on the Lightning page from a related list of that parent record.
Okay. Yeah, in nonprofits, we have the Nonprofit Success Pack, and it has something called affiliations that show how a person is related to an organization. I make use of that to say that the person is related to my org as a client or as a volunteer or as a staff person. Yeah.
But then kind of to extend that, I think you could, so in terms of the original record types question, if you want those things on the child records to impact things on the contact, I could see behind the scenes, I could see still utilizing record types, depending on the complexity of what you need, I guess.
Okay.
Whether it's checkboxes on the contact or it's these specific types of affiliation records or child records. If your sum count of your volunteer records is greater than 0, then when that happens, that hypothetically you could change their record type behind the scenes so that the page does what it needs to do. So even if people aren't selecting record type specifically, you could manipulate behind the scenes so that the page looks the way you want it to. So
I like that. Yeah, Christy's right.
I'm surprised. Obviously there's a few ways to skin the cat, right? But either way, I think you can. I mean, the idea of getting rid of record types and moving them all to one record type is just a data load question. But I think it's more about looking at why you had them and what you wanted to do differently and seeing how you can still do that. If it because if you did have one page layout with a lot of visibility particulars on the components, then that might get a little tough for you to manage. So then maybe having different layouts related to different record types might be easier for you. Kind of just depends, even if the end result to the user is kind of the same.
Thank you, Christy, because what you just said, I was trying to figure out what else do you use record types for, and you're right. It's to isolate the data. So if you have specific data that you want to isolate from others for reporting purposes or for processes, automated processes, that this data is handled different than that data, definitely you can use record types to do that.
And this is Brendan.
Give me a lot to think about, and I wrote down both your names.
Yep, and I agree with both Chrissy and Stuart. One thing to add to that, if you have, say, a custom object for volunteer, as an example, or for vendor, which would create the related list, you can always use Process Builder, and in the logic, say, if the ID starts with whatever it is, 00F, something like that, then you can have automation from a custom object actually go up to the contact too. And I built out stuff like that previously, specifically for volunteering, where you have the contact, then they have all their volunteering things, they have all their affiliations, and it's really the contact, but you have multiple other objects that show the individual details about them. So the record types in that scenario would be more on those custom objects.
Very interesting. Okay, thank you guys. I've enjoyed this discussion. And Brendan, I wrote down your name too.
Excellent.
All right. Thought I saw a hand go up. Who else has a question? Marcel, go for it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Hi, I'm Marcel. I'm from Houston, Texas. Quick question for everybody. Does anybody know if there is a app out there on the App Exchange that would be able to allow us to schedule reports to record owners? As most of you probably know, you can't do that in Salesforce. In other words, we're trying to schedule a report just to the opportunity owners so that they just see just their own opportunities, and that report just goes to them in mass. So there's an idea out on the App Exchange for a feature for this, but I'm just curious if anybody knows the workaround to do it.
The closest workaround I can think of would be to create a dynamic dashboard. So say if it's my pipeline, my closed one, my activities, and then schedule that to be sent out to, say, a sales group. If I have 10 sales reps, have a public group for a sales group, and then schedule that out, because then that would be sending it I might be wrong. I have to look something up. Sorry.
Marcel, which edition are you on? Professional or enterprise?
Enterprise.
Okay. Then I think what Brendan was just describing should work for you.
Okay. I will take a look at it. Thank you.
Is there a way to push that back onto the users to have them subscribe to reports? Because if you subscribe to a report, will it not email the report the next time it's run to you? Maybe I'm incorrect there.
If you set up the report to show my results and then have them subscribe to it, yes, it would shoot out just their records to them. You can even put a threshold on it if you wanted to that says only when it meets this value or has this record count on it.
But they have to do the subscribing. In other words, we're just trying to, right. We're trying to force a report to them on a daily basis. Yeah, the subscription thing would definitely work, but you have to force them, unless we all went in behind the hood, and this would take a lengthy process for us for hundreds of users in order to make them manually subscribe. So unless there's some automated feature of doing that. But.
I think the scheduled report should work.
Okay. You mean dynamic?
Yeah, a dynamic dashboard, or yes.
Okay. I've actually never done that. I'll have to try that. Thanks.
It's like Tony's got a question.
Go for it, Tony.
Hey, so I'm from near Atlanta, Georgia, also near Alabama. I'm from near a lot of places. We are in the process of replatforming, finally getting toward Lightning. Been on Classic for a while, and one of the requirements that we have is we have what is called a key contact and key decision maker in our account records. And those are just what they sound like. You know, they're the individuals that should something major happen. So I work for a travel company. So should, you know, there be a breach in contract or, I mean, in like data privacy or whatever, these are the people we reach out to. The requirement is that we need to have at least one key contact and one key decision maker in every account record. Can be multiple, but we need at least one, and that's got to be, it's got to be in there. So currently in our Classic org, we have a field, and I mean, there's other requirements. The other requirements are the key contact, key decision maker has to be either associated to the account in question or associated to its parent, and has to be active. So we've put a contact status in there, active or inactive. So anyway, currently in Classic, we have a field for each, a lookup field that looks to contact, and validation rules that look to make sure it's, you know, associated to the right account and or active, to stop anybody from actioning on the account if it's not. During this replatform, we were looking for a better way to do that, a better user experience to do that with, and we are working with a Salesforce partner, and their original thought was, hey, why don't we just use contact roles, which we had thought of before too. The problem is we can't force it, at least not that we can figure out without a bunch of code, and code is a no-no in our system. So my question, so they've come back and they've gone, all right, the way you guys are doing it is the only way we can think of at this point. So I just wanted to bring that to you guys and see if there's any other like brilliant ways that you can think of that gets what we need done.
So right now it limits you, by using the lookups, it limits you to having one of each?
One of each, right. Yeah, and that's not a huge deal. Right now we only have one of each. We said, yeah, we could use, I mean, you're allowed to have as many as you want, but right now we're limited to one because we use a lookup field.
Because I was almost thinking you could have a field to flag it on the contact level that then rolls up to the account. But then you mentioned they could also be on the parent account.
Right, it could be on the parent account, yeah.
At what point are you trying to enforce it? Like obviously when you create a new account record, you wouldn't have context to add.
Well, that, I mean, that's kind of an open question. And one of the things that we've said is, you know, if that's the stopper, then tell us when we can enforce it and we'll see if we can go back to that.
Because it's like, I almost like contact roles, but then does anybody know, could I do roll-up summaries from contact roles to account? And then it would just be some kind of batch that then I could validate. Like, for example, when the customer goes from prospect to customer as their type, like something changes on the account. That means, you know, when they're only a prospect, I don't care. But once they've signed an agreement, they become a customer, then I need a key contact that could validate the roll-up numbers.
I don't think you can do a roll-up summary from contact roles. I'll test it in my dev org to see if we can use Process Builder with that thing I referenced earlier of if the ID starts with X, then update it. But at least in my knowledge, you can't.
Yeah, and that's the biggest stopper right now is how do we enforce it, right? That's because the contact rules was great. You know, I mean, and we do have stages in the account because they're going to do prospecting in the account and then move to opportunities. So the stages, you know, we have stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and I think they said that the enforcement should happen on stage 3. So you're right, it's not like on creation, but it's the enforcement that we're struggling with. Like, how do we make sure that at that stage they have at least one of each?
Can I ask why you want to avoid all code?
It's it's a political thing. It's a company decision. I mean, not all code. We could basically, it's if it can be done in configuration, we don't want to write code, and it has to do with the ability to modify the code, how quickly that can be done, our resources, that kind of thing. So if something needs to change, you know, we can't have a 2-month delay, which is what we have currently for our tech team. We have one specific team that manages Apex code and Visual Force.
I wonder, would DLRS work between contact roles and accounts? Has anybody used it recently? Stu's adding some comments in the chat there, but of course, one of them is triggers. But I think the complexity to me, the complexity that I find is because the person could be on another account. So, but again, I think if you're happy with the way that you're doing it now with one of each type of person, then you could validate, excuse me, sorry. You could validate when they go to stage 3 or when they become a customer that those 2 fields are not blank.
Right, and that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing today. We're making sure. I mean, you know, we're making sure they're number 1 not blank, number 2 are active, the contact status is active, and number 3 that they are associated to either the account they're working on or the parent.
I mean, the other way to do it is, sorry, this is Stuart. The other way to do it is to create your mousetrap game, which is for every validation you have, yeah, you'd set up different process builder, different automations, perhaps create a checkbox field or something on that master record, be it account or opportunity, whatever you're going to base these on. And then when you hit those validations, so you've got the correct contact role that meets all of its criteria, then you check that checkbox on the account, and then you've got the next thing that meets its criteria. You check the next checkbox, and then finally, when you have all the checkbox checked, then you allow it to go to the next stage 2 or whatever. But it's setting up all those dominoes in order to then say, okay, this one's good and this one's valid. Otherwise, yeah, it's hard with these related things like the contact related contacts and things like that.
Could you create your own object that's basically contact roles that's called key contacts, and it's just a junction object between the account and the contact? And then again, you'd have a roll-up summary of the count of those records to then validate with.
So you're saying, like, create, instead of using the standard contact roles, use a custom contact roles, and then roll up summary and count the number of those records where whatever role equals key contact.
Yeah, or the other types, like you could have one of each type. And then on that custom junction object, you would have the logic that you mentioned, that they're appropriate to the right accounts. And then and then you could have the type, and then you could even use formulas to pull down, you know, their phone number, their email, or whatever you wanted on that key contact record. And then you could have that related list showing as a component on the account page.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So we just basically just replace
the
standard contact role with a custom object.
if you're not using opportunity contact roles, then it doesn't matter as much that you're using the native, because I think that's one of the main advantages, right, with your contact roles is that when you create opportunities, they roll into opportunity roles, opportunity contact roles.
Oh, do they? I wasn't aware of that.
I might have made that feature up in my head then.
No, it's possible. I mean, we are looking. I mean, we don't use any of that currently. We don't use contact roles in the account or the opportunity currently religiously at all, but we want to, especially our marketing team wants people to kind of be forced to use contact roles, especially in the opportunity.
Well, and I think that's a little bit different of what use case, right? For contact roles and opportunity contact roles, to me, that's decision makers, influencers, versus this is kind of a niche thing where this is your key, like the troubles happening, contact this person, contact. That might be the decision maker, but it might not. So you could use contact roles for that, but I can also see the argument of having that be something separate. And then, maybe your key contact is your opportunity decision maker, but that's two different things, or it could be, because contact roles can't do what you want from a validation perspective.
Okay. All right. I like the idea of the custom object. So yeah, well, maybe we'll take that back. Thank you very much, you guys. I appreciate it.
And quickly going back to a previous topic, this was about the dashboard that shows my records. I just tested it in my dev org, and you can't schedule out dynamic dashboards. That's why in the middle of what I was saying, I was like, oh God, I realized that they're different. So in that case, I would recommend having a homepage in Lightning that has the My Pipeline, My Closed One, just as components themselves, so that they could just see it when they log in, or have them have a scheduled report for each individual report be sent out to them, but that would add to their total emails. So I think the homepage component would probably be the easiest for the end user.
Thanks, Brandon. I appreciate that. Yeah, I was just checking that out, and I realized in those scheduled dashboards, actually they have to be manually refreshed.
Yep.
If I understand correctly. Yeah, we were just trying to force something out there for them. So unfortunately, we're not in Lightning. We're about to do our Lightning rollout in Q1, so next year, which is great. And then you can actually force a homepage dashboard out there for those guys, if I remember right, according to Lightning. I've read. So.
And actually, there's a workaround.
Thank you very much.
And there is a workaround in Classic too. You can create custom links and just have the link to the report on it. So then if they go to their homepage, there's a section on the left-hand side for custom links, and it would say My Pipeline, My Closed One, that kind of thing.
Oh, that's a good idea. Okay, didn't think about that. Okay, thanks.
Of course.
Awesome. Great, great conversation there. Thanks for bringing that back up, Brendan. All right, Sarah, you have your hand raised. Go for it.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm building a moderately complicated flow, and we are getting an error periodically that is an unknown exception error, and that's about all the information I get from the error. And I was just wondering, it's really frustrating because it doesn't happen every time in the flow, it only happens sometimes. And I was wondering if other folks had experience with that and where you started trying to debug something with so little information.
My first question is, have you turned on the debug log for your user or whatever user is getting this error to see if you can track it down there?
So that's in the developer console, right?
No, it's in setup.
Okay.
So let me just go into org here. I was going to do flow. Yeah, if you just go under setup and type in debug, and just start to type in debug.
Because we definitely have we've tried debugging it in Flow Builder, but it's just giving us the same error as the flow error email. So
In my experience, when it gives you a very generic error, it means that something stopped it, like a validation rule is being fired, a required
Okay.
field is not being put in. So I would suggest going into the sandbox, try it with all validation rules off, see if it
Okay.
comes through, and then just identify if there's more than one thing that's happening. Because usually when I get the generic one, there's 2 or more problems that are happening.
I see. So it's like hitting a couple things and it's like, I don't know which one of these is the problem, so it just fails.
Exactly. And it's
Okay.
pretty typical that if you get an error saying something to the extent of couldn't find lookup, it typically, in my experience, would mean you're trying to look up a record and there's also a validation rule that's stopping it from firing. So that's why you're getting it, the error saying it couldn't find the lookup, but the actual issue is the validation rule.
Yeah, here, I'll copy the actual text into the chat because it's very, very generic. Not even anything about.
Oh, yeah.
And we tried contacting support, who are, of course, like, you don't have a high enough level of support for us to deal with this.
Yeah.
So,
I'd start with looking at validation rules and or required fields, making sure that everything's populated.
Yeah, that's a good point, Brendan. Yeah, I mean, I would just, certainly the debug log could help here. So yeah, just go under setup, type in debug and choose debug logs and set up a trace on either your user or another user and have them do it. Now, granted, because it's only happening every so often, you may have to do it a couple times to get it to occur, but then you can go back to the debug logs and look through that that trace, and you should see what is going on there, right?
Okay.
And be able to see that it should tell you that it errored out, and you could go find that error in the trace. But yeah, as Brendan said, what I usually do there is go back through my flow and see where I'm updating a record or creating a record or looking up a record, and just validate that, hey, whoever's getting this error, right, has permission to do everything on this record. And I would even just make sure, field level security, validation rules, all of that.
Okay.
And just comb back through there. Cause there could be something under the covers there that it's just not surfacing as a normal error message from when it's hitting. So
one thing you might already be doing too is sometimes if you add a screen that just basically prints all the values that you expect to have at that point, then that way you can see, like, if something's blank, then it's not getting it.
Right.
So that's probably what you've already started doing. But
yeah, but it'll be good to go back and just maybe throw everything on there that could possibly be throwing an error. And I think the validation rules is a good place to check. I hadn't thought of that. So in terms of the developer logs, are there resources for learning how to read those better? Because I feel like a lot of the time I don't even know what I'm looking for in the logs.
let me see.
I find that I try to just don't pay attention to them until I get to the exact screen, and then the next one that comes up to only open that one. But I'm also not the best at reading them.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call myself a professional. I've used it a lot over the years, and I think a lot of times what I end up doing is, and I'll put in the viewing debug logs article.
Yeah.
Which isn't, frankly, it's not super helpful, but yeah, a lot of times what I do is, normally if it does error out, in that case, the status will show an error. So you go into that particular debug log, and I usually just do a controller Command F and try to search for error or failed. Because a lot of times, if it's validation, right, it'll say validation failed or insert failed. So just trying to search for those keywords. Because especially, right, the debug log is going to track like everything that's happening within the system. So even if it's, if you're creating a record as a part of the flow of that entire action, right, it's going to track, okay, I created this record, and any workflow that fires off of that creation, all of that is going to be in there. So you will have to sift through it. But yeah, I just kind of search by keywords and just try to nail down at least. And sometimes it may not get to that, specific area, but it at least may point you in the right direction of an object to look at or a field to review.
Great.
Sarah, don't give up. You're in the right area. You're doing the right things. Because I'm having these similar problems too. So I'm channeling an automation hero of mine. His name is David Litton. And
David's awesome.
And so I'm just posted in the chat a link that I'd like you to read. It's from David Litton. His blog is Salesforce Sidekick, and he has an article about how to deal with errors from flow.
Great.
And it's a really good article. I'm gonna have to read it 3 or 4 times to really understand what he's talking about. But hopefully I'll see him at Dreamforce and be able to tap his mind for more stuff. Flow errors are hard, and I have to constantly battle against them. Don't give up, Sarah. You're awesome. You're gonna do it. You're gonna do it.
I'm sure we'll get this one. I mean, I love bug hunting, as it were. So I'm on it. Thanks for the resources.
Yeah. That one is a really weird error. I've not seen that.
That is bizarre. That is a bizarre error.
Yeah, that's why it threw me for a loop. Normally, I can figure out what's going on, but this one was just like over my head. So, but I will keep at it.
You've tracked it down to the specific flow, right?
Yes, definitely know what flow it is, and it is in a sandbox. So,
you know what the user was doing or what was going on right before it happened?
Yeah. So basically, and I can show you the flow if you want, but we're trying to create an order with a product, like an order product item. Forget order item, I think is the name of the object. So we're basically creating a draft order, and it's failing when it tries to add the order item after we've given it a product, a price book entry, an order to add it to. Sometimes it adds it just fine, and then other times it won't and gives us this error. So it's something in there with those
Something with
objects.
timing? Something around timing?
It might be. That's what I'm wondering, if like something didn't happen in quite the right order, because sometimes things aren't firing exactly when you think they are. But
do you want to show us your flow in the
Sure.
sandbox?
Yeah, let me pull it up.
Because I'm looking, I just kind of Googled the error. That's another thing I do.
Yeah.
On these, and it looks like it could, some other people have received a similar error.
Mhm.
If it's running into any sort of limits, like a query limit.
Okay. Yeah, I can go ahead and share the screen, I
Hey,
think.
Jared,
Or,
Yes, Stuart.
do you call that a GAC? Do you know what when I say the word GAC, do you know what that means?
I do not.
Okay.
It sounds
Yes.
hilarious, though.
yeah, I
It's
just
something
found
my
an
cat does.
article about that, actually, what a GAC is.
A GAC?
Yeah,
Like
what
GACK or?
GACK. So
or
it's
no, just K, I think.
really just
Okay.
K. So
According to the
GAK.
help article.
an unexplained. I mean, to me, it's an unexplained error that comes out of Salesforce, right?
Yep.
Or
Mhm.
it has that number, but that number sometimes means you just did something we don't have a name for to give you a proper error. So it gets a number. And then eventually when we figure it out, then we can go back to the number and update the error.
Okay.
But yeah, it just like barfs out a number.
Yeah, that happens in
GAC.
Community
So-
Cloud sometimes.
Oh yeah, this is in a community, so that probably might,
Oh.
maybe that
Maybe.
is something to do with it.
I love what we're like.
The plot
"Ooh."
thickens. Okay.
Yeah, I guess I should have mentioned that. But so
Does
here's
it-
the flow. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So let me. Basically, what we're doing is stop. So do I have the community open? Yes. So we're basically recreating a little storefront through a fancy flow. And so we have these product pages that are, so this would be a product 2 API name object. And you can go to there and there's this little flow in the corner where it says add to cart version 2. And what it does is, hang on, let me get back to that other tab. I think it's this one. Yeah. It gets the product record and then it figures out which contact is associated with the user. Checks if the product's in stock. Then it looks to see if this person already has an order. If they have an order, if they don't have an order, create one. If they do, great, move on. There's a little sub loop here if there's variations to the product. Some of our products have different variations, and so they would actually substitute the variation product that it wants. All of this seems to be working fine. So then you actually add it to the cart, and then, oops. And then it's up in this corner here where we're actually creating the records that I think it's failing. So at this point, we have create an order item, and we're feeding it the order that it wants based on that previous lookup, the price book entry ID, which we've gotten from, I think there's a formula that based on what type of user it is, it pulls a different price book, and then it looks up the entry ID. And then what the product ID is, which is what starts the flow, is the record ID, is the product ID, how many the person put in, and then the unit price, which is a field on the product, which should theoretically create an order item, but this is where we're ending up getting a fail sometimes, but not always. So I imagine it's probably one of these fields. There's a permissions issue, or there's a field missing that we need, but it's just confusing that it's sometimes and not always.
Wonder if it's product record related.
Could be.
But not always.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so like, for example, so here's what the fault looks like when it happens, and then I get that flow error in my email. But if we went to like a different product,
Is there any consistency whether can you run the flow as logged in as yourself, but not as a community user or the guest site user?
it does seem to be, this community user is just a dummy one that we made, Bobby Brazilnut. It does seem to fault with him more. I haven't noticed it as myself, so I'm guessing it's a permissions thing. But
Are they all part of the same price book?
they should be, because once the price book is based off of what the user's department is actually.
Okay. Okay.
So let's see. Let's find something.
Yeah, because that was my thought, Stuart. Is if
Yeah, I'm just thinking permissions and oh gosh.
So here it says, do you want to add it to your cart? We click add, and I'm guessing this is going to work, though it might fault out. Nope, there it worked.
Dang.
Do you use the debug tool in Flow?
Yeah, it's a little tricky because, so the in Flow, here, we're looking up the contact based on the current user contact ID. So if we wanted to run in the community, we set that with a formula to whatever the current user is. So if we want to debug it, then we have to hard code in here. So we just have to switch back and forth for using the debugger on the back end.
yeah,
I think if we debugged it now, it wouldn't actually work.
And do we know which price book it's being assigned to for that test user?
Yes, it should be. So, oops, get back to my flow here. Price book formula. So if the user's department is member, we assign it the member price book, and this is hard coded in. versus the non-member price book. So it's this one.
We were all going to say something.
Yep.
Yes. I think
I know, don't
we're all
hard code
cringing at the same
I
time
know.
when we saw that formula. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I know.
Just so far in the sandbox, okay, guys?
Yeah. Here's my intention is you would look up the price book, store its ID, and then put the variable in there if we
That's
were doing
fine.
it properly.
It's okay.
And
Yeah,
can we take a
I
look
know.
At that? Sorry, can we take a look at that member
sure.
price book record?
Oh, yeah. Let's see.
Pick your battles.
Yeah. So it's this one.
I just wanted to super confirm that we had that product in there, the one that errored out.
Oh, yeah, the Morris spells, I think it was. I believe it's these ones. So, like, if there's something missing here, maybe, but
Mhm.
And it's active too.
yeah. Anyway, I think it's probably a permissions or a validation or something like that, but I'll have to dig a little deeper, I think, and so knocking it up
Yeah.
a debug tool level would be good.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely would compare those products and see, what's different from ones that
Yeah.
have errored and ones that are successful.
My guess is there's like one checkbox somewhere,
Yeah. Yeah. Or is it erring also? Is there any difference between like the creation of the order versus updating an order?
Seems to error on both of them. So
Okay.
whether it's in the cart or not already, that little loop in the corner seems to, well, it's not really a loop, but like regardless of which way it gets to the screen here, it seems to error sometimes either in this create records or the update. So, but I'll dig a little deeper.
It's a cool concept.
Thanks.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's an incredible flow.
The record's not actually updating, or is the record updating and the screen's throwing an error?
I think the record is not actually updating.
Okay.
Like
So-
it's not actually getting added to the cart, the order. If we look at, I mean, it's a little hard because at this point, I mean, the other thing is like we've done so much testing. I don't know if there's some conflict in the order, like sometimes you can get a bunch of test records that are conflicting with each other and then throwing errors because they're so messed up at this point. But
Or if you have two testers testing at once, maybe?
yeah, doesn't even have any. I have to go find his order. But anyway, yeah, mysterious.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I would check all those areas and just see if you can find any differences or,
Okay.
Again, validation, field level security.
And hopefully the debug log, I haven't looked into that yet, so hopefully that'll have a little more detail than the error itself.
And just to
Yep.
clarify, when you went to that other product and it went through, when you clicked on it, you said it was successful.
Yeah.
I just noticed on the contact that it didn't have an order. Should it have populated in that second scenario?
That's what I thought. That's what I was a little confused why it's not showing up here under orders, but also I know that this is a separate problem that the orders related lists are a little bit, they've been acting a little strange for me. So like if we go to actual orders, so which one? Should be able to search.
Did you get an email with the error message or just what's on the screen?
Yeah, we did get an email. This is one of the previous error message. So it does get all the way up to this create records and then failed. But yeah, I don't know why the order's not showing up.
Yeah, this is a fun one.
Yeah.
Could I see the email?
Oh, sure. Let me know if you want me to scroll up or anything.
I don't see it yet. Sorry.
Oh. Oh, I see. Hang on. I think I have to change what I'm sharing. New share. There we go. Can you see it now?
Yeah. Able to create record.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that's
So that's the right price book.
Yeah. Well, this is the price book entry, which I did check is coming from the correct price book.
an
So I think the
order
price book.
ID.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, weird.
So if we look at orders.
And is there a way to, in the flow, to set something so you can see that order item ID? Do you need order item ID? And can you set that somewhere so that you can check it?
Yeah, I guess we could, like theoretically, the order item ID won't happen until after it's created. But we could display some of the stuff before the create records. Before the create records node to make sure we have all the right information there. But it looks like from the error that it's getting values for everything I expected it to get values for.
Yeah, that does look like. I mean,
but I'm wondering if I've missed a required field or something like that.
I just went into my dev org to see if there were any order required fields, and I couldn't find any out of the box.
Okay.
Could we look at the validation rules on orders and line items?
Sure. Switch back to here. So in setup, so order, I'm not even sure there are any validation rules, but okay. Oh yeah. So I wonder if it's one of these. Don't allow posted without. These are usually what happens when we're trying to activate an order, which is moving it along, but we can look at them.
Yeah, I'd be curious about that lock one specifically.
Yeah, cannot post an inventory until the request. Yeah, so that, oops, back. This one, lock on posted. Oh, so maybe posted date. If posted date is blank, then it might be, or no, if posted date is not blank.
Right.
Yeah, if it's been posted. Yeah, that's something to check.
I would check it. Okay, great. And then
It is weird that, yeah, sometimes that validation doesn't get up to that level in the flow errors.
yeah. This order has at least one order item product. The quantity is 0. Add a quantity or remove the product before you activate. But this is, yeah, because the status isn't activated on this, it's draft. So I don't think this one will fire. But yeah, I'll check into that posted date. Maybe that's something weird is going on with that.
Yep. And can we look at the line items as well?
Sure. Oops. This one for the product. So if you've added a promo code to the order, so order promo code lookup is not null, then you can't change the product. But that's once it's in the order. But this might be something to look into also.
And it's not activated.
Oh, yeah. Right, so that one's not the problem.
It would have given you an error message on that one. More specific.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if there are multiple things that are going wrong, sometimes the error just doesn't get specific because there's too many things going wrong.
Yeah.
Sure.
Maybe this one
Yeah.
is if status is not draft.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
but
So it's something to test in any case.
yeah, I'll definitely look into the posted date one because we're not looking at that date right now. So it might be, it got filled somehow and we didn't expect it to, or something weird is happening with it. But all right. Thanks for digging into this.
No worries.
All right. If I figure something out, I'll report back somehow.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, post it out to the group. That's good stuff. Let me finish sharing. All right. Well, we're at time, everybody. So thank you. I love troubleshooting flows, so that was a great way to cap off the call. Appreciate everyone diving in there and everyone's help today. Have a good weekend. We'll talk to you all later.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.